Hi Foxes, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Brittany. I am also known as SHOPFOXBURROW on sites like Poshmark and Etsy, and also over on Instagram. And today we are going to be talking about whether or not you should open up an Etsy vintage shop. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in knowing a little bit more about, and if you're on the verge of making that decision, then stick around. Alright, so you're maybe thinking about opening an Etsy shop and you're just not sure, or maybe you feel like intimidated by the whole Etsy website. Maybe you've sold on platforms like eBay or Poshmark or Mercari or Depop, and you're just thinking like, should I get into Etsy? And today I want to go over sort of what I would consider the threshold for being worth it. Now let me make it clear that this video is not to tell you that you can't do something, that you're not good enough, that your photos aren't good enough, that your items aren't good enough, none of that. This video is meant to help you decide whether or not it's worth your time to dedicate to opening an Etsy shop and doing all the things that will actually result in sales over there. So you can open an Etsy shop and spend your time, coming up with your graphic and your banner and uploading all this stuff. But if you don't have any sales, then it's not worth it, and it wasn't worth your effort. So for me, really, these are like some of the thresholds and sort of like what the Etsy community is looking for, what's going to lead to more sales for you. And that's sort of my like bar of whether or not it is worth it. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is how many listings you plan on having, because I feel like this is like the bare minimum for whether or not it's worth it for you. So if you are listing, I would say at least one vintage item a day, 5 to 7 vintage items a week or more, then I think that Etsy is probably a pretty good platform for you. When I first opened my Etsy shop back in 2012, I wanted to start off with a minimum threshold of 75 items in the vintage category in my shop. And that was when I opened my store. So I had 75 items vintage ready to go before I even opened my shop. Now I have it, I think somewhere around like 310, something like that. And I keep adding more every single day. I feel like 75 is kind of that bare minimum threshold where you start to really get some traction and your items start to show up in Etsy's feed. Because Etsy doesn't just look at your individual items, they look at your shop as a whole to decide whether or not to promote it and to boost it when you are looking through their search engine. So if you only have 20 listings or 20 potential items that could be sold, then Etsy doesn't really consider you a high value seller because you don't have a ton of stuff that could lead to making them money. Because vintage is one of a kind and each item is individual and can only be sold once, if you are a seller that has maybe 5 things in your shop, but it's like a digital item or something that people are buying a lot of, that's different. We're talking about vintage, and if you don't have at least 75 items in your shop, I feel like you're going to have a hard time gaining the traction that you need to show up in Etsy's listings in their searches. Next up is sort of the expectation of the community. So on Etsy, yes, you can get more for items than you can on other sites, and yes, Etsy buyers do come to Etsy looking for vintage and they sort of know what they want and they will pay more to get that item. But it's also a sense of curated knowledge. So when people come to your Etsy shop, they expect to see a semblance of like curation like they might if they walked into a boutique. And they expect you to know what you're talking about. So if you're just getting started with vintage, again, I'm not saying that you can't list on Etsy, but research is really important because you can get some bad reviews. People on Etsy know what they're buying, and if you sell an 80s dress as a 50s dress, and let's just say that you charge a 50s price for it, somebody's coming after you. So it's important to know kind of what you have and to be well versed in dating vintage, and to have that curated look to help boost a buyer's confidence in your shop. Because let's face it, on Etsy there's so much competition for vintage. Let's just say you search 1950s dress, there's going to be thousands of pages of 1950s dresses, and how are you going to be the one to stand out? So it's a little bit of a harder market to break into, especially if you don't know what you're talking about. Sites like Poshmark are definitely a little bit more forgiving when it comes to listing vintage, and Mercari. All you have to do is know that it is vintage. You don't have to know so much about it. But Etsy really requires a lot more like selection for the different drop-down menus that they have, ways that people can search, and just the buyer is expecting you to know more about it. Okay, so you've got at least 75 listings and you feel like you know what you're doing. So that's a pretty good indicator that maybe you should open an Etsy shop. But there's a little bit more to it than that. So Etsy has a lot of great things going for it. First of all, it's a list it and forget it platform, which is phenomenal. Basically, you list your item and you don't have to do any more work to promote that item ever again. Etsy will continue to renew your listings. They will keep charging you 20 cents every 4 months to keep that listing live. And just like eBay, it's going to be out there until basically you tell it not to be out there. Unlike Poshmark, where you list it and if you forget it and you're not sharing your closet every single day, multiple times a day, nobody's going to buy your stuff. So on Etsy, you have a couple of things that you can do. You can do paid promotion with Etsy on-site ads, or you can opt into their Etsy off-site ads program, which is a bit of a higher fee, but depending on the type of items that you're selling, it could be worth it. And you can then do your own promotion, so driving your own traffic from Instagram to your Etsy store. So when Etsy sees that you are driving traffic to your Etsy store and there are more links online promoting your Etsy store, more links on websites, it is going to prioritize your Etsy shop and your Etsy listings. So the longer that you have been around, maybe the more that your items come up in Google search, or the more that they show up on Pinterest, or the more that you promote them on Instagram and you get people coming from Instagram and clicking your link to come to Etsy, they recognize that and they will begin to promote you more and give you more views. So Etsy, you know, it can be amazing or it can be a fickle master, and you have to decide how much time you are willing to give to Etsy to make it worth your while. Because if you are not listing, then you are not going to be selling. If you are not promoting yourself, then you are going to have really slow sales. So yes, you've got 75 listings. Yes, you know what you're doing. But also consider that you might want to find ways to drive traffic to your Etsy store from outside of Etsy. You are going to get some internal traffic, but there's a lot of competition, and it's just going to help Etsy determine that your item is worth looking at if you can get people to come to it. So whether you post it on your personal Facebook page and say, hey everybody I know, please click this link and go to Etsy and view my item, then Etsy's going to be like, oh, what's this? What's all this traffic? Where is this coming from? Oh, Facebook? And then they're going to promote it. So you have to get creative and do a little bit of your own marketing when it comes to Etsy, and that kind of helps the Etsy algorithm favor your items. Another thing about Etsy is that you are going to need to know how to ship your items. You are going to need to know how to weigh your items. And they have actually made international shipping very, very easy. You don't have to ship internationally if you don't want to. But just like eBay, they now sort of have like a global shipping program where you ship it to a distribution center in the United States, and then they sort of bulk ship it international. And that is in part so Etsy can abide by a lot of the UK laws and make sure that things going in and coming out are the way that they're supposed to be. But they do make it very easy to ship international. You will still have to fill out a customs form. You can do it electronically. You could sign it electronically. You can do everything electronically. All I do when I'm shipping an international package is put in, you know, it'll populate the title of the listing for you, and I'll just erase it and put like, this is address. And then it automatically has my signature in there. It automatically dates it. It's got the weight. It calculates the shipping for me. So the shipping on Etsy, I think, is very easy. It is relatively inexpensive, but you do have to have a shipping scale, and you have to be able to weigh those items, and then you have to set your shipping profiles up so that you are shipping your items based on weight, and then make sure that in the listing you are selecting your calculated shipping, and that will calculate the amount that it's going to cost, whether it's going to someone in a neighboring town or across the country in California or overseas in France. It is going to charge the right amount to the buyer based on the weight that you have entered. So I get asked, you know, whether or not Etsy is worth it. I think that it is, but it is the platform where I started, and I do recognize that it has a lot of downsides. If you are just a super casual vintage seller, and you don't really know a lot of what you're doing yet, and you don't have consistent stock to upload to Etsy, maybe hold off. I'm not saying don't do it or that you can't succeed. I'm just saying that you're going to be investing a lot of time, and the return might not be what you expect. So right now, I am listing probably between 2 to 5 items a day over on Etsy. And maybe making 1 to 2 sales per day over on Etsy. And that's after, what, 9 years of being on the site, and sort of building up that traffic, and some of it is directed from my Instagram to my Etsy shop. So yeah, it's just, the Etsy algorithm is a special kind of beast. You have to use SEO to make sure that your titles and your tags are helping your item to be seen. You have to promote your item outside of Etsy, and you have to have enough items that Etsy considers your shop worth it to show up in the Etsy feed, and you have to kind of have that, like, that look, you know, the kind of curated, I know what I'm talking about, I know my vintage. You're not gonna get something that is inaccurately described kind of vibe to your shop. So it is definitely tricky to know when the right time is to open up an Etsy store. Right now I sell on Etsy and I sell on Poshmark. I spent a lot of last year kind of debating back and forth about what other platforms I might want to try out. I did try Mercari. I hated it. I thought about trying Depop, but everything I heard from other sellers was that it was a little bit slow, and that you also had to go in every day and promote or boost your listings just like you do on Poshmark, and mama ain't got time for that. I have 2 kids trying to run a business here. I don't have time for that. I pay someone to share my Poshmark listings, and just, I don't want to do that on another platform. So ultimately I decided that this year I'm going to be working on setting up my own website via Shopify and expanding a little bit into eBay, which is also a list it and forget it platform. So just keep in mind and do some research before you decide to dive into another platform, because each one that you do, you know, it's taxing. And I just think that time is money, and, you know, stress is not worth it if the payout's not good enough. So just think about it, and let me know what your comments are down below. Leave me any kind of questions you might have. If I'm able to answer them, I will. I am also considering doing closet or Etsy shop consultations starting in February. I will probably only do 4 a month, and I haven't worked out all of the details about that yet, but if that's something that you're interested in, let me know down below so I know it's even an idea worth pursuing. I don't like to do anything that's going to be a bust, but sometimes you just have to put yourself out there. Yeah, so that's it for this video today. I just did a video about my craziest Etsy sales for the year of 2020, and I just wanted to kind of put this realness out there and just be like, hey, don't waste your time if you don't think that you can really pursue it. Yeah, that's all there is to it. All right, I'll see you later. Bye.